Whoops. Sorry about that, guys. Um, yeah, if you see those like old school commercials from back then, um, just sleazy tactics of trying to get people to like start smoking. They make it look so cool, and um, they make it look tempting, and the voice is very inviting and friendly, and like, yeah, they're just basically trying to brainwash you to buy their products. It's a bit of a OBS hiccup. It's just kind of something that happens. Sorry about that, y'all. But, just going back to the idea of, forming good habits. Just practicing every day to make sure that it just becomes a thing that you want to do every day. You're not sitting there, you're not battling in your head, and you're not like, oh, I should do this instead, or I should do that. Just by not doing it, you're already like, I should sit down and do it. It just kind of happens. Once you get yourself into the rhythm of it, then the motivation just kicks in every day for you to do it. You just have to stick to it. But yeah, on that topic, like capitalism and all that other stuff, like I don't have a problem with money. I just have a problem with it just not being regulated properly. Where it's just like, you could do whatever you want. There's no limit to it. You could, if you wanted sex trafficking, if you wanted to do drug trafficking, it's fine. As long as you're making capital, as long as you're making money, that's okay. And yeah, I don't agree with that. I don't think that people's motivations for decisions that have to do with the economy, that has to do with anything, should be primarily on profit. That's a sickness. You're only thinking about money. You're not thinking about progress. You're not thinking about how do you improve the economy? How do you improve social interaction? You're just thinking about how can I profit? So if that means I get to screw this city or town or these people out of their money, then that's fine, because capitalism, that's the whole idea of it. It's like, the common example for me is like having a car and saying, well, you could just do whatever you want with it. If you want to avoid rules and regulations, if you want to avoid the importance of other people on the road, their lives, it shouldn't matter. It's because carism. You could get a car and do whatever you want. It's not up to us to tell you that you shouldn't be responsible with how you use it, that you should care about other people on the road and the rules and regulations and how your decisions with the car are going to affect other people. So it's really more about that. I think money does have its benefits of allowing people to be independent, not having to depend on somebody with the resources or whatever it is that you want to gain to be just right in giving that away or whatever else. So it does have its benefits, but just like cars, it should have rules and regulations and limits to what it could buy. You shouldn't be able to buy out politicians. That's not right. That's creating chaos. That's creating problems, because they're not making decisions based on the economy. They're making decisions on how much money you're giving them. And that's corruption. That's damaging everything. That creates a ripple effect. of so many different problems. So I don't really, I don't agree with it. I don't think it's a good system. I think it's an incredibly toxic system, as you guys could see over the years and what it's created. And it's not just these years. It's been going on for centuries. Like, this problem of greed and corruption has been an ongoing problem. Like, I was watching a movie that had, that was like back in the not 50s, and even in the 50s, back in like the 70s and 80s, and people were protesting about terrible wages and inflation, and it was like the same exact story. So you have to wonder, why are things repeating? You know, why are things happening over and over again? And it all leads to that. You know, it leads to the fact that people are making decisions based on greed. Greed and arrogance, because there's some people who think like we're more entitled to life more than others, which is very similar to square stash values. And they have like people like that making decisions as well, and don't find that to be alarming. And that's a huge problem. Huge problem. All right, and I can probably fit another example here, and then I'm going to jump into doing the muscles on these bones in those perspectives. So just how it is here. You know, this applies to this, so you'll get to see how these muscles kind of lay on to the bone to some extent. I mean, it's not too in depth. You know, I think one of the best ways to figure that out, if you really want to dive into it, is taking a sculpting class. Like, those are great because you do actually form the layers and apply them onto the bones, and you get a better understanding through that. So it's kind of an interesting process. You really get to be more and more familiar. You know, the more time you spend on it, the more you study it. The more ingrained and better understanding you have of the figure. And that's one way of doing it. Is by taking that sculpting class and using clay to kind of see, you know, how all these parts, how all these muscles lay onto the bone, and then just from that being like, oh, this is why. You know, you see this detail when the skin is on top. This is why it jots out. And it also gives you a great understanding of shadows. So like how you form the head, for example, you know, and you form the cheeks, then you start to see like, okay, this jots out. So when the light is on the head, it's going to hit areas that really that really jot out. You know, so the nose would catch more light because it protrudes out of the face. You know, the cheeks would catch a little bit less, but still more light than other parts because it protrudes out. You know, so it's just this like front, foreground, background kind of concept. You know, things in the front get more light, things in the back don't. They form shadows. And the shadows are formed because of the things in the front taking up that light. So it's this interesting, it's an interesting process. It really does get you more and more familiar with the figure because of that. And all these other principles that help. It's not necessary. I wouldn't say you need to take a sculpting class in order to understand anatomy or not just to understand the figure. It's just another way to get a better understanding. Because essentially what you're doing with all this drawing, right, is you're creating a 3D model in your head. You know, you're creating these rules and understandings in your head about the figure, so that when you're referencing it, you can change it, you could turn it, you know, you could lay it down, and it'll be so clear in your mind's eye that you'll be able to just draw it out. And going back to that whole like capitalist rant, there was an example of what kind of people it starts to breed and create. This is something that happened in like the 1950s, where an old man, a veteran nonetheless, died in his apartment because the electric company turned off the heat, turned off the light, and you know, he wasn't able to pay the bill. It was an old dude who was like probably like in his 80s, 90s, late 80s, and there was like an argument in court. It was like a trial, and this person brought up like this idea that, you know, is it right that your greed is basically the cause of this person's death? Like, and the guy basically answered, it's not up to the company to look out for the interests of the person. It should be the community and the people. You know, so they're basically saying, I don't care, you could die, and what's more important to me is my profits. You know, so this is basically, it's a sickness. Like they'll prefer some paper, this made up concept of money, over what is right to do. Like reduce this guy's rent, reduce this guy's bills. You know, consider the fact that he is actually an old veteran nonetheless, somebody who served this country that you're ripping off. You know, the least you could do as a thank you is like offer him some way to like pay the bill, or, you know, set up a plan for senior or something. You know, just basically have consideration. But instead, this guy's like making an argument against it and saying, well, we just want our profits. Like, we don't care, you could rot. And what's more important to us is we make our annual profits. Our profit margin should be better than last year's. It's a sickness. It's producing crazy people. You know, that's why they say like gambling is an addiction, and like many addictions, people say, do, and act crazy to maintain it. You know, so for when gamblers are just like taking all their savings or like stealing from their spouse or whatever so that they could go and make more, or they could continue to gamble, you know, all these are terrible things. They're not, well, it's capitalism, you know? These are terrible things that teach people awful ways of dealing with problems. And that's what I mean. It's just, you need to create better regulations so that there'll be progress instead of more people being in position to do things like that. They don't like fund education systems to help people make better decisions and to be a little bit more educated, because that's going to get in the way of selling things like cigarettes. If you're smart, you're not going to want to do it. You're not going to buy their crappy products, and they don't want that. So they reduce education, they cut back on things, or they hire people to work in these institutions who are saying things like, we just can't afford it, budget cuts. Meanwhile, they're pocketing a lot of the money that is being sent over. So it's just things like that. It's crazy behavior. It's nasty behavior that capitalism encourages. And all the companies who have the politicians in their pockets, basically, like they're saying, well, we're making billions off of smoking ads, so we want you to support that by, giving this guy more position and power, who's going to support our efforts in, let's say, stifling education or misinformation. And he's going to fight for our right to just continue to exploit people. So these companies make billions of dollars, and it's very different from, let's say, somebody who contributes like $5 a month, But I think if billions of people contribute $5 a month to the right politicians who will look out for the economy, not corporate interests, we can get some great results. Like AOC, she doesn't take money from lobbyists and these like corporate schmoozers and stuff. She's there because she wants to make the economy better, and that means providing people with resources to be able to make better decisions, not desperate ones, not crazy ones, because that's just what these companies want you to be like, but ones that will make it better for you. And a lot of times people end up doing things like drugs and become alcoholics because they're frustrated from the lack of opportunity that they have for whatever reason. So instead of providing resources or ways and programs for people to like improve and, I'm not saying just give out money, but just provide ways and research that. Spend billions on that instead of billions on ads and people to make things worse. Like, the money is being poured in for the wrong reasons. And that's what I mean. It's like, you shouldn't be able to buy people out. It should be about the goals, and the money is just there on the side. Just the same way with like cars. You got your car, you got your destinations, you still have to follow rules and regulations that affect everybody. And until more people are demanding that as opposed to supporting it and being indifferent to this reality, it's just, you're going to just enable more and more crazy people to make decisions, and things are just going to get worse. They don't care. Like, you are that old man. They want you to be gone while they collect profits from your misery, basically. Like cigarettes, they're collecting profits from your misery. You're not smoking because you just want to have a good time. You're smoking because you're anxious, or you're frustrated, or you want to feel relaxed, and all those things are signs of frustration, or some things that are kind of bugging you, whatever it is. So these companies are profiting off of that. Even people who are like, I just want to have a good time, but why is that your decision for a good time? You know, because you probably feel anxious, you know, because you don't feel easy, or there's unrest in you. And why is that? What is exactly going on that's causing it? That makes you want to smoke, get wasted, or whatever else. And if people were really actually religious, they would back that up. You know, it doesn't say anything in religious text about, well, exploitation is great. You know, you should be able to do it. Racism is actually really good, and it's a virtue. Like, come on. You're going to claim to be religious, meanwhile you're going to avoid everything that the religious text is talking about? I hate all other nationalities, but I'm a religious person. I'm holy, and you know, I'm a true Catholic or whatever. Meanwhile, they're just like advocating for racism and sexism and all this other stuff that's not what the Bible talks about. It talks about having a personality that's totally the opposite of it. You know, having like caring for people, not just your own type of people. Whatever how that means. It's just nonsense. It's just crazy behavior. Alright, so going back to drawing. We've done the 3 examples. We got the back, we got the front, and we got the side. And now, and I'm going to fill this up later. As I mentioned, this book is coming to an end quickly. Only got a few more pages. Well, 3, maybe 4 more pages. Alright, now we're going to start with the muscles on those bones. So we're going to do, let's see how it is here. We're going to do the back first. So we're going to do this one first, this one, and then this one. So in the same order, so that when I open it, when I fan this out, you guys can see the examples. So I'm going to start out by drawing cylinder shapes. Hey, alright. Pretzel. Throwing in some reggae. With basis for ska.
Traffic lights are green, I'm driving. The songs of love on the radio.
Now I'm wondering if this is a chill channel or if this is a different channel. Whatever it is, it's great. I'm enjoying it.
Today was a very good day. 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 I heard the sound of children playing. I saw the laughter in their eyes. The scent of summer flowers fill the air. You feel the love that is all around. Today was a very good day. Today was a very good day. Today was a very good day. Yeah. Today was a very good day. Ooh.
And also, I don't think, going back to that whole conversation about capitalism, I don't think that all companies are like that. Like that example I was giving you about that electric company, the sociopathic electric company. There are businesses that have certified B license. They're a certified B corporation. And in order to get it, you have to have consideration for your employees. So you're paying your employees livable wages. You are conscious of what your products are doing to the environment. So environmentally conscious companies, they're conscious of their community, like where they're setting up shop and like how that's affecting the community and that sort of thing. You guys should check that out if you're interested. Check out certified B corporations. And there are some companies that I notice I even buy stuff like, I buy tea, and on the package it says, you could see it says certified B corporation. And I support those companies. I think it's a great initiative. That's exactly what the business model should be. It's like, so along with the fact that they're making money, their priorities aren't just about profit. So they're not taking shortcuts, they're not cutting corners, they're not doing terrible things to make as much profit as possible. That becomes secondary. So their model is to create profit, but at the same time, the priority of how it affects the economy has just as much of importance, if not like the main structure. How can we actually create good business with all of these things taken into account? Which is exactly how every business that exists should be ran. And the free market is saying the opposite, saying no, you should just do whatever you want. Just like the car example, just drive around however you'd like, do whatever, avoid all rules. It's your car, you should be able to do whatever you want with it. If the pedestrian is in the way, well, that's their problem. Just run them over. You got a place to go. That's basically what, if you're talking about capitalism, if you're talking about money and all these businesses, that's basically what they're saying. That's their justification for anything. And it breeds sociopathic people, because it basically says if you don't do what we're doing, if you don't follow our way, you're not going to get this job, or you're going to get fired. So people are just like, okay, they start actually talking about this and spreading it to other people to justify their own actions for the paycheck. So it just creates a really sick society. And it spreads more and more because more people are like, well, all these businesses are kind of taking over and they're spreading this sort of ideology. And with the internet, this isn't something that happened more so at the Industrial Revolution back in the 1900s. This is something that really spread like wildfire with the internet. People spreading their business ideas and ways to all over the place. You don't have to travel anymore. You could just do it online. You could have your chats and meetings and stuff. Nobody was able to do that before. So it's exponentially growing. It's spreading even faster and faster, and people are taking all these like business models and ways of treating their communities, where they build a business the same exact way. They take these exploitive business models and setting them up all over the place because they also have investors, right? From those companies, like people who are making billions of dollars, and they're like, well, let's set up another one where we could even triple that with the same business model, the same practices. So you guys can see how incredibly toxic and parasitic it becomes. Like it spreads from one person to another. Like literally, it's parasitic. It feeds off of other people to become bigger. And it's feeding off the misery of other people to become bigger. That's what parasites do. They feed off the host and they become stronger and better while the host slowly dies. It's a big problem. Now going back to the drawing. As you see, the parts of the bone, like I'm going to bring it up. Now I'm going to fan it out and you guys can see here. So this is the front view. This is the front view. As you could see how the muscles kind of add to it, like the bone structure is here, but the muscles layer onto it. And you could see certain parts jutting out, like because there's so much bone right here, the muscle that goes on top of it really jots out. So when you make that shadow, it's because it's protruding more. And now that you know that there's that muscle right there, you can create a shadow there and it's going to make sense. So that's why in the example itself, you see like these little lines, this feathering done to kind of indicate like, this part is curving inwards and this part up here is catching the light. The light source is from the top right. So everything that's in that direction is getting more light. And this right here is in shadow. Because again, it's a cylinder shape, it curves, but with muscle definition, you get a little bit more variation in terms of the shading. So like parts that are really in the back, muscles that are being overshadowed literally by other muscles get darker, and other parts that are more muscular tend to jot out. So in this example, this is why this area right here is in the light. It's not just style. Like when you're looking at this, it's not just style of hatching, cross-hatching. It's ways of still revealing the detail of the muscles. Like here, for example, this line right here. If you were to draw like a solid shade over it, you wouldn't really see it as much, right? So this cross-hatching kind of allows you to see the detail while also indicating that, hey, this is catching a lot of shadow. It's turning away from the light, and these muscles are really jotting out. So they're catching it and casting a shadow, or blocking, rather, light from being access to the other parts of the leg. It's like a happy accident kind of, right? Like you're just like, how do I show shadow while still maintaining detail? And maybe if I just don't fill it in as a solid and just do gradual shading. And then it turns into a style. This is just a guess. I have no idea, but it just seems like that could be the process for it. That's how it came to be. But you'll find other artists talk about that too. They'll say like, hey, I found this like style just from practicing from drawing from life. In fact, I do have a memory. I remember a long time ago when I was much younger. I went to... Well, I guess it wasn't too long ago. Maybe it was like... I want to say 7 years ago. I went to Comic-Con in New York. And I spoke to an artist. And that's what they were saying. They were saying, you know, draw from real life a lot. That's one of the best ways you could really improve your work. And I kind of try to ask that to as many people as possible, just to kind of see what their opinions are, right? And then make connections to see how many people actually have the same experiences. And that tends to be a very common theme. Like a lot of people say, like, you know, if you want to really improve, if you want to find a style of your own, draw from real life. And draw people. And that will really improve your work. And it just makes sense. You know, something I had mentioned previously as well is like, you cannot fudge certain parts. You cannot fudge the human figure. But you could fudge a tree if you're drawing still life, for example, or you're drawing objects. You could fudge it and it still looks relatively right. But with the human figure, there's no room for that. You know, you fudge the eye and then the other one's going to look weird. You know, if you're not paying attention to it, you fudge the anatomy and it's going to look deformed. You know, so and that's something you immediately catch. With a tree branch, if you don't draw a certain detail, no big deal. It might not look as great, but it still will pass the eye test in a sense, you know? And what I mean by eye test is like something I mentioned also as well. It's like we all, even if you're not an artist, right? As a viewer, you have this like instinct that tells you, oh, this looks right, you know, and that really is dependent on our ability to recognize, or because we've seen it so often throughout our entire life, we recognize instinctively proportions of the body, what looks right, you know, what's common. It's just something that's in the back of our mind in a sense, and we could instantly tell, you know, when something's a little bit off or whatnot. You know, having to meet people all the time, being in school, seeing people, just constantly being exposed to people, your eye just gets used to features, and we all just kind of recognize it. So we all have this instinctive kind of reaction to things. So even if you're not an artist and you look at an image and you're like, oh, that looks good, and that's primarily because we've just taught ourselves, or instinctively we become able to recognize these things. So yeah, when you draw out the figure and you're fudging things, it's not going to look good. So it calls for you to really practice and really perfect your skill in order to pass that eye test that everybody has. So you have to sit there, you have to pay attention to detail, you have to really consider the lines that you make, and that pushes you to get better. So that's the whole idea of you should draw from real life, because it does improve your skill, and it also lets you explore all different ways, as I was mentioning earlier, to draw the body, to draw the face. Like one person might really pay attention to the corner of the mouth, and that really changes a face expression. It could be from being a smirk to being, more sullen. Another person can really pay more attention to the eyebrow or the line under the eyelid, and really get more focused on that, and that will come out in their personal work as well, because they tend to gravitate more towards that detail. So even though we're drawing the same exact model, what you choose to fixate on, or what you choose to develop, really becomes an individualistic choice. And that's great, that's fascinating. I think that's what's so cool about art, about drawing the figure, about that whole process, is that everybody kind of has their unique perception of the same subject. That's my only gripe with, I would say, anime, is that it kind of teaches everybody to draw the figure the same way. You're not really the same features, kind of. Although anime varies in style as well. There's many different styles to it. I just personally like how really individualistic and very different person to person comes to when it's drawing things outside of anime. I'm not knocking it. I really enjoy it. There's beautiful work out there that I'm a huge fan of. But I do like seeing more work outside of that. You really get to see people's creativity. You get to see their own scope of vision, in a sense, when it comes to this. This kind of actually brings up another topic here, me cross-hatching. I mentioned in my drawing basics stream often, take your sketchbook with you. Get yourself one of these little sketchbooks, one of these guys, and practice doing shading there. Doing the midtones, highlights, and shadows. Highlights, midtones, and shadows, and practice them there. Practice having control over how hard you press on the pencil. That's a perfect opportunity. Practice drawing basic shapes in there, and this is another perfect thing to practice cross-hatching. It also allows you to do all those things, just varying your practicing, varying what you're doing in those sketchbooks. It's another mindless kind of activity that allows you to improve your technique, similar to practicing the gradations of the highlights, midtones, and shadows. Whoa, I'm going way over. Well, this is it for Drawing Basics, guys. If you enjoy the content, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button. Also, check out the Patreon page. I just launched it Wednesday. Check out the previous broadcasts titled Patreon page launch and schedule change, where I go in depth about what's on the Patreon page, what you guys can choose from the tiers. Take a look through it, read through it, see if something excites you, and send in your work. And we'll create more interesting streams, more interesting community. And stick around. I'll be back in 5 minutes to draw Conan the Barbarian.